Greetings all. Welcome to another session here of Tuzi Talks. Today we're going to continue our discussions in language curriculum design by talking about the variety of approaches that are out there with regard to curriculum design. Actually, when I look at the approaches, and we will look at least two of the models, they're very similar. The differences, in my opinion, are minor, but we'll take a look at them and some of the elements that are involved, and then actually the question about deciding the approach, which is what you'll need to be doing when you design a curriculum. First of all, let's take a look at two models of design. The one that we've been working on most particularly is nations. Nation is the text from which I'm getting a lot of this information. But again, the process you'll see as you compare with Graves is very similar. We've gone through these 8 processes here: environment analysis, needs analysis, remembering your principles, deciding your goals, deciding your content and sequencing, presenting it in a way that is going to be motivating to your students with regard to format and presentation. We've set up monitoring and assessment tools, and then we've learned how to evaluate the whole process so that we can do it again and make it better. Now, Graves has a similar design approach for doing a curriculum design. He begins by defining the course. He assesses needs. He articulates beliefs. He formulates goals and objectives. He organizes the content, and he organizes the course. He develops some materials and designs an assessment plan. You see that a lot of these things fit together. This one probably goes to both of these, right? You see a lot of these things fit together, and so we're saying a similar process. This is not unlike the design process for the product life cycle or the program life cycle. So it's similar to this whole idea of a life cycle where you begin with something and you plan, and after you plan, you design, and after you design, you build, and after you build, well, you reevaluate so that you can redesign it. That's what manufacturers do all the time, be it something that's hardware or something that's software. They're continuously trying to upgrade it. They're using this type of cycle. And so Nation, Graves, and others are using the same type of model with regard to a curriculum development plan. They have this circular style. There are going to be some design constraints. Questions here that you might want to ask are things like, who's my audience? Who are the people who want this particular curriculum? So again, I need to know who the audience is. What are their skills, age, preferences, that types of things. What are their skills and interests, right? You also need to know if the curriculum is actually going to be implemented as planned. You may be the curriculum designer. You may not be actually running the curriculum. So someone else may run into that and say, this isn't the way I actually wanted it, or this isn't the way it's going to work for me, so they revise it. You may want to know that. Other questions. Where do I begin? It's always good to begin at the beginning. And so, no, seriously, where do you begin? Where do your needs begin? Maybe you're working with a foreign school. You're in a foreign country and they're learning, 7th grade English, and they've already had 2 years of English. Well, maybe they're already beyond your basic, and now they're at your advanced basic. And you need to begin to develop a curriculum for that. Maybe they only get to lower intermediate, so your window is kind of small, but that's where you want to go. So you want to begin where those needs begin, and you want to end where the requirements are completed. That's a smaller window. Now, it should be, my opinion, it would be good to set up the whole thing, but if you're not going to be doing things at the upper end or at the lower end, there's little incentive to actually go out and do that. But that's one question you're going to ask. Where do you begin? How do developers move through the design process? They're going through the same design process as they would before, right? They should begin with analysis. All right, let's begin with another question, which are starting points. Where am I going to begin? Well, what if there's no curriculum? My opinion, that's easier. Everything can be built. You design and build everything. Yay! If you like it that way, if you have the opportunity to just begin from scratch. Normally, that's not the case. Normally, you walk in somewhere and stuff is already pre-built. Stuff is already made, whether it's good or bad or complete or incomplete, it's there. So if it's already, if there are parts that are already there, now you need to do a needs analysis and also analyze what stuff is there. Does it meet those needs? Okay. Some people aren't going to have the time to do that, so they're going to try to look for other ways to get stuff. You could also be doing it from a repository. Hey, I already have a ton of activities. I have this huge library over here of materials that I have used in the past, and I can use them again. Well, that's going to be a good thing. It's going to make the collection of activities going to be a little easier because you have this huge repository. You can select the stuff you want, sequence them out, and you can begin building your curriculum. Okay? Maybe you're given a course book. And if you're given a course book, well, then selection and sequencing has pretty much been done for you. They give you this pre-selected material and pre-selected sequence of doing things. And that's what you follow. Hey, I'm done. Well, if I were the teacher, I wouldn't necessarily let the book teach the course. And this is a pet peeve that I have when I'm in the class. I'm the teacher. The textbook is not the teacher. And I believe that the teacher should be able and be prepared to teach the course. The book is not the master. I am the master. And to be perfectly honest, the administration should not be dictating how I teach in the classroom. So I do not like being told, here's the syllabus, here's the text, here are the paper. Everything has to be defined for me without knowing who my students are, without doing a needs analysis. That's me. Others who are going to be very comfortable with that because it means less work for them, less responsibility. Maybe they have less time to get the work done. So there is definitely a place for a course book. But what that means is everything's already done for you. It's already decided. You can also use existing materials and then supplement, right? That's an advantage because you've got the shell already in place. Okay, I have the shell in place, but I need to add or take away a couple of things. Good. It's nicely done if you can have that shell already in place. So here are some places, here are some starting points that you may want to look at. When you're setting up things, you're going to have a variety of elements that you need to walk through. Obviously, you're going to need to list the goals and the objectives for each lesson and for each course. Okay, so your objectives are your larger types of things that you're going to want to look at. I generally create, for my teachers, I generally create a guideline or a prospectus that lists the primary elements that need to be covered. I don't give them a textbook. I don't tell them how to teach those components, but that they should be covered by the time they leave. The exit exam should focus on those things. Okay, and the exam doesn't have to be a paper pencil exam. It can be other forms, but it should verify that the students do indeed know this information. You want to set up the goals and the objectives for each course. You want to decide the size and the numbers of the lessons. Okay, it's got to fit within your time frame, obviously. You need to choose content ideas. Now, that can be you and your student, that can be you and your administrator, but you need to pick out what those are. For me, I typically have a 15-week schedule. So I'm going to have, at the very least, 15 different content items. I may have fewer. I may spend 3 weeks on one particular content idea that I can expand out. Regardless, I need to choose them. I need to choose the language content, okay, which means I need to know what my students need. I need to know the high-frequency elements, high-frequency vocab, high-frequency grammar, high-frequency speaking skills, reading skills. I just know what those are so that I can put those all into play. After I've selected all these pieces, okay, then I need to put them in order. It's not unlike a jigsaw puzzle. You have all these pieces, and then you line them up in such a way. I know most people, what they do is they look for all the flat sides so they can get the outside of the puzzle, right? And then they start filling the pieces in. Well, in this case, you've got all these activities here that are all assigned to some objective, and then you're starting to put them in an order so that things fit into place. And that's what you're doing when you're sequencing. Make sure that they're interesting. Make sure that you can solve these things. You can succeed in mastering those elements. Make sure that you have some kind of spaced repetition as you go through the process. A couple times where you come back to this particular writing skill, or you come back to particular vocabulary, right? Then you divide the language and content into lesson groups, right? And break them up into meeting times type of thing. Okay. After you're done with the content and sequencing, now you're going to choose the formatting of the system. You're going to choose the presentation, right? Choose how you're going to how these materials are going to appear, right? Is it going to be paper and pencil? Is it going to be digital? Is it going to be is it going to be a big book, or is it going to be a small book? Are we all going to be sharing books? What type of directions are you going to have? Instructions are you going to have for your teachers to know how to use these materials? So anyway, you want to look at costs. You want to look at the size and the cost in time and money as far as how these materials are going to appear. You should choose appropriate activities. Make sure that they're appropriate for your students, for their age, for their proficiency. Definitely include the 4 strands, and I would definitely want to make this exciting. Keep your students interested. Keep them coming back for more. Say they want more. I want to do this more. Bear in mind, you already know your objectives, you already know your content. Make it in such a way that students say, man, this was great, I want to do this again. That it's fun for them, okay? Then you develop your lesson format, your sequence in, and you put your activities in, okay? Now you got to produce the materials, the teacher's guides, and actually fill in that area with the materials that you're going to use. The materials that you're using, they're kind of lower down on the totem pole. They fit within the sequence, which comes from all the ideas and components that you want to use. So you're drilling down into more and more detail as you go down. That's format and presentation. You got all the format and presentation done, you're pretty much done with regard to the majority of the elements that you need. Next thing you want to do is decide out how you're going to measure this, how you're going to evaluate this. And so you need to put in which things you're going to grade, which things you're going to evaluate, assess, and how you're going to do it. Remember, some can be paper-based, some can be observation, some can be, a project or a presentation, but you're going to need to decide where and how you're going to put in these little gate posts so that you can say, okay, the students are learning this, these materials are actually doing what they're intended to, okay? And then you're going to obviously do some type of evaluation at the end. You're going to look at this whole process that you did. Now we're back up at the top of the circle again and saying, hey, I want to review everything that I did so that I can revise it and make it better, okay? And that's going through the entire process that's there. Now, there are a variety of what they call approach types or models that have been set up. Again, the one that they begin with here is called the waterfall method, and that's where basically your first decisions impact your next decisions, impact your next decisions, and on down the line. So your needs analysis defines what your goals are, which defines your content and sequencing. Okay, you can see how that works, right? You have the focused opportunistic approach. This is somewhat of a develop as you go type of system because you don't have any time. Okay, things happen, and you may be in a situation where you're put into a situation and you don't have the time to do the development that you would like to do. So you're developing as you go. You see an opportunity, you see a need, and you say, okay, we'll build something for this. Okay, teachers have the basic format, but they modify the course as it's being taught. Assessment is also developed kind of like on the fly. Not the best way of doing things, but that's certainly sometimes necessary simply because of the environment that you're in. And then there's the layers of necessity model. This model is where you decide I'm going to do the most important things first. It's kind of like a time crunch as well, but you have a little more time. So basically, you have all the components of the curriculum and they should be all done before you begin. You begin to develop this idea of good enough again, partly because of a lack of time, but partly because you want to layer the needs. You want to get the lowest ones, the most important ones first, make that the foundation, and then build on top of that as opportunity arises. So you're going to do a needs analysis, you're going to choose the materials, you're going to choose a simple format, you're going to assemble the materials, you're going to develop the assessments, and if more time exists, you're going to add another layer on top of that. Another layer of activities that you could possibly use, or another layer of opportunities, right? Activities that have a different format or a different type of an assessment, or to move on further to give students more opportunities for practicing with fluency or new concepts, right? It's a higher layer. So in this case, this is kind of like the extension of an activity. I'm going to extend out to new opportunities, provided we have time, type of thing. So there's a couple models for setting things up. Obviously, the best one here is going to be this first one, where everything is prepared in advance. Doesn't always happen that way, simply because of the situations that arise. And speaking of situations, what are some of the factors that are involved? At what language level do you begin and end? Okay, and I think we've already talked about this before. Where do you begin with regard to language, and where do you end? What's my beginning and end game? That may be information that you need to find out from your administration, the people who are running your program. But you need to know what that is in order to build the curriculum that you're going to be building. Another questions that you may have is, how much time do you have to build the curriculum? How much money do you have to build the curriculum? And if time is going to be an issue, again, you're probably going to be doing some more things on the fly. If money is an issue, you're going to be limited as to what you can do. If money's not an issue, well, then you'll be able to do more. Money should also be an issue with regard to what your students are paying. I have my feet in two worlds. One is in linguistics, second language acquisition, ESL. The other is in technology. And I used to teach a course in technology at a 4-year university. And I was amazed that they were requiring students to pay $100 for textbooks. And the material in the textbooks were easily available online for free. But the school required that they purchase these books, so they had to buy the books. If it were up to me, I would say make the teachers go out and find this information so the students don't have to bear the burden. The school did not want to do that. They wanted to put the burden on the students to make it easier for the teachers. Okay. My opinion is the less cost that it's going to be, the better. Now, at the same time, we want quality. So there's always going to be a playoff at that. But you should look at quality. You should look at money involvement. How much is it going to cost you in terms of money and time when you're building a curriculum? Obviously, the more time you have, the better off a system will be. And the more money you have that's used wisely, the better a system can be. But there's also a lot of stuff out there that's open source, that's free. And so you may want to look into that as well. Finally, how much skill do you have in developing the curriculum? You may have money and you may have time, but you may not have someone on staff who's able to build the curriculum. They've never done it before. They've never practiced with it. So here we may run into a problem here where we may want to rely on somebody, hire somebody. Hopefully you'll have somebody on staff who's gone through this process and they'll know how to do the building of curriculum. Some factors involved when you're deciding on an approach. That's all I have for this little session here. Thank you for stopping by. If you do have questions or comments, you can post them down below, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye now.